Yeah, my name is Julian Wilberg. I'm from the Technical University of Munich, and I'm going to talk about performance assessment of interdisciplinary innovation processes. So what I'm going to cover in my presentation today is just give some theoretical background at first to kind of frame the topic, then talk about our research methodology that we took in our research project, then go into the analysis and the results that we produced, derive some discussion and implications, and then sum up and give an outlook what the next steps in our research project are. So why is it important to look into performance assessment of innovation processes? If you look at companies nowadays in the dynamic markets, they're forced to strive for efficiency, not only at the shop floor, but also in innovation processes. If you want to be efficient or increase your efficiency and effectivity, you need to, first of all, assess your performance, and then in order, depending on what the results are, you have to take certain measures. So taking measures and measuring comes close together. And the problem is that it's often not that easy to assess the outcome of innovation processes because they're very kind of diverse. I will go a bit more into detail into it. And the research project I'm involved, we are looking especially at product service systems. I'm not sure who of you is familiar with this concept, but for example, copy systems are a good example for PSS. Most of the companies are not selling their printers anymore, the copy systems for offices. They're renting it out, so you're paying per page, and then it includes service, maintenance, and all the stuff, car sharing, bike sharing. It's a good example for PSS, and we are especially looking into this PSS and how you can support the innovation processes of such combinations of technical products and services. And if you look at the innovation processes of PSS, it becomes even more challenging because you not only have the technical part, but you also have kind of service management in it, what brings an additional perspective to innovation processes. And if you now look at this problem that we derived, our idea was, or our motivation was to derive an approach that allows the assessment of interdisciplinary innovation processes. And when you look in the state of the art, what's there already about the performance measurement of innovation processes, literature kind of gives you some insights that a lot of companies struggle with it. And as I mentioned, one reason is the complexity of innovation processes, but they are also more fuzzy. If you look at the production process, it's kind of, you can take a time clock watch and just measure the time from starting to the end. You have a physical product, but innovation processes, they're not that straight. So there's sometimes rerouting, you maybe sometimes end at a dead end, so it's really hard to kind of measure what's the outcome and how efficient are we. But somehow you have to assess it, because if you're not efficient with your innovations or with your innovation processes, you might fall behind or you're not able to succeed in the markets. And a lot of the existing approaches, they're not covering the different facets that you have in innovation, because innovation, depending if you look in PSS, involve a lot of different disciplines. So the tools that are available, they look at innovation processes from a very limited perspective. And that's where we thought, okay, how can we kind of support this problem with measuring the performance of innovation processes with existing tools. And we also found in literature, I mean, most of you are most likely familiar with the balanced scorecard. So the balanced scorecard was already kind of mentioned in a few publications to be suitable for framing the performance assessment of research and development processes. Because as you can see here, it not only has the financial perspective on innovation processes or in processes at all, but also some non-financial aspects that are especially in innovation important, because innovation in the end, I mean, you have to make profits with your innovation, but on the way there, there's more. You have to look at, for example, your team. How is the learning? What is the success with your team? The collaboration with suppliers, for example. How do you integrate your customer? And how do you kind of prepare the processes, the product design processes, in order to be successful in innovation? And from our perspective, the balanced scorecard gives a good kind of blueprint looking at innovation processes from different perspectives. So we kind of had the problem, we need performance, or there was a need for performance assessment, and on the other side, the balanced scorecard that gives you kind of a little, like some support to how you can frame this problem. And to give you a better understanding what the research project is that I'm working in, it's a large research project that involves approximately 30 PhD students, and it's funded for 8 years already, and we are now in the third funding period for another 4 years. So in total, we will be researching for 12 years. And what's really interesting with this research project is that it doesn't only involve mechanical engineers, but also psychology, sociologists, computer science, you have informatics people, you have production people, you have business people. So that's kind of an interesting aspect because we're really looking at innovation processes from different perspectives. And therefore, a problem is that we have a lot of different models because every discipline tries to understand innovation processes from a different perspective. So our product design people would look at, for example, how could you derive the requirements, how can you coordinate your stuff among the engineers. The psychologists, they would look at how do the organization deals with innovation. So they're all framed around innovation, but they all have a different perspective on it. And now the question is, how do you bring kind of this the different perspectives together on innovation processes? And that's the same problem as companies face, because in a company you not only have engineers, you have marketing, you have sales. So kind of we're small copy, let's call it a small copy with the different perspectives that you have on innovation processes. And that was the driver for us to look into the different possibilities, how we could connect our work and support industry with it. And that brings me to the research methodology. And we followed a kind of two-way approach. First of all, we started with semi-structured interviews among the PhD students and the researchers that are involved in this research project to see what are the connections between the performance indicators, the models and the methods the individual teams or research projects are working on. And then we also looked into like a top-down, more industry-driven approach to use the balanced scorecard to derive classifications or areas of performance assessment that are important from an industry perspective. So we have the kind of research perspective and the industry perspective. And now the question was, how could we bring it together? And you can see already here, there's a lot of complexity involved, and that's why we decided to go for a matrix-based approach to kind of derive the links. And here you see like a MDM, multi-domain matrix, and these are the domains that we are covering our research. So we have models, indicators, and indicator blocks. And you can see here the reading direction. So the models affect indicators that were derived interview-based, and then also interview-based, and also from literature. We looked into which indicator belongs to which indicator block based on the industry perspective. And now the question was, how can we kind of capture this different links and what can we take out of it? And that was the next step. So we first of all looked at into this DMMs, into this DMMs to understand what is the links between the models that are derived in our research project and the indicators. And the difficulty was that we had a lot of kind of a lot of data. So we had 34 models, 28 indicators, and 9 indicator blocks that were derived from literature. So the question is, as you see here, what's the outcome? So what does it tell us? And that's how we decided to go more into detail and have some initial, like, let's say, simple evaluations, but to derive maybe kind of the more interesting layers or like levers for the models and the connection with the process and the indicators. So if you look into, here's just like a little summary of what the outcome would be. So we just looked into kind of the frequency, the amount of outgoing connections the models do have, and the incoming, how many indicators with most of the influences by the models. And when you look at it, You can see, for example, the process perspective was very, very important. And on the other hand, also learning and growth, what is like very interesting, because process, I mean, I would say makes sense, that's important, learning and growth as well, but it also kind of represents the interdisciplinary approach that we're taking with our research project. So this comes from sociologists and psychology that are also kind of bringing a different organizational aspect into innovation processes. And you could also see the customer perspective was maybe a little bit underrepresented, because innovation should be driven also from the customer perspective. This also is maybe an indicator that there is like a lack in our research projects. And now the question was, how could we kind of come up with a more important insights for industry, because the industry often they also use models, but they often work indicator-based. So the question was, how do the indicators influence each other, right? Because you have in innovation, you have different levers, meaning you can affect certain aspects, and then the question is, if you take a certain measure, what is the effect on maybe others? So the connection between indicators and models is also interesting. This is more for like a research perspective interesting, because that gives you an insight which research projects might work together, because their models are interlinked through indicators, and those are more interesting for industry. So if you take certain measures, what are you what are you causing with it? And so this one, the two DSMs were just derived based on matrix calculations, and you could see here they had a quite high density, so there were a lot of links. Density was like 43 and 35% for the corresponding DSMs. And if you look into the outcome here again, just like kind of simple evaluations, the process again. The process models are really, really strongly interlinked. It makes sense because process models kind of also connect the different perspectives and the different parts of innovation processes. And what is also a very, very interesting aspect is engineering change management was also a key indicator part among the independencies and the key the performance indicators. I'm not sure who of you is familiar with engineering design research, engineering change management research, but this is for many engineering companies a large problem to keep this under control, especially if you have complex innovation processes where a lot of different disciplines are involved. A lot of companies really struggle to kind of control the engineering changes and to assess, if you take a certain decision, what other disciplines are affected by it. So the engineering change management numbers or indicators are very, very highly integrated part in our research model. So what do we come out with? We realized that there's really a lot of indirect and direct independencies. And from us, if you want to kind of improve your performance of your innovation process, you really have to know what you're doing and to like access kind of what other kind of parts of your innovation process or other characteristics of your innovation process you are influencing. Due to the high complexity, you should really be aware that maybe a certain decision is not limited to like a certain department, for example, but drives much more. And our research approach can help to kind of increase the transparency concerning this dependencies. And especially in interdisciplinary collaborations, maybe research, but also companies, it helped us, for example, quite a lot also to start a discussion to understand which researchers should collaborate together, because they're somehow linked with their research topic without even knowing, because they're kind of driving the same indicator or like influencing the same indicator, but the models are kind of looking at it from different perspectives. And so you should work together and make sure when you make decisions, maybe look at the problem from the 2 or 3 different perspectives that are linked. And the implications that we derived from our perspective for research is that this matrix-based approaches really can help you with the performance assessment, because you can link indicators, models, and all the different like elements that are getting like the outcome of your research. And it also helped us to really kind of frame and connect the different viewpoints on innovation processes that we have in our research project. So to really have like one kind of document or two different representations that showed us how we work together and how we kind of influence the same topic, because we're all working on innovation processes. For management, the outcome or the framework that we worked on can really help to kind of as a blueprint to like combine or like to compare with their own understanding of the innovation management or innovation process assessment. So we're not claiming that it's like kind of everything captured in our model, but I think it's a good starting point to see, okay, are all these indicators, for example, important for our case? Should we change them? Should we get new ones? Should we adopt the model? But at least you have a starting point and to see maybe where are interrelations. And also we're now going to discuss like the outcomes with industry, and from our perspective also the outcome will help them to understand the interrelations much more from their organizational standpoint. And yeah, the increased transparency from us for our understanding is also very important, to know what the mechanisms are within innovation processes, because something that we learned over the last 8 years we're researching on it, it takes quite a lot of time to first capture and understand what the different like components of innovation processes are, and then now to understand, okay, what are the underlying mechanisms? So if you want to drive or make a certain decision, what is the reason why I should do certain things, or why I shouldn't do certain things, or why I shouldn't do certain things just like separated, why I should combine, for example, measures together if I want to be successful in innovation. So to sum up, what we did is we developed an integrated framework for innovation controlling based on our kind of experience with the different perspectives on innovation processes. The balanced scorecard served as a blueprint, as a framework to kind of look at innovation processes from those 4 major perspectives. And then we used matrix-based approaches to really derive the dependencies among the different indicators, the models, and also the indicator blocks to kind of bring the research perspective and the industry perspective together. And overall, we had 134 dependencies in it, so it was really also for us good to really capture it and write it down instead of just talking, okay, there might be a relation. We really had workshops discussing it, going over and over again, and it really helped us to also frame our understanding. The next steps are that we're now at the moment, it's just, there's a connection, there's no connection, so there's just like a 0 or 1 at the moment in the matrix. Thank you. And what we're now looking into in the next step is to see maybe there's like a strength or a certain direction. Maybe the indicators and the models are not always related in the same way. So that could be kind of enriching the information inside the matrix. And then this one is also important for us to go and talk more with the industry, to have a discussion about our research results, and also capture what are the indicators that industry is using to assess the innovation processes that they have in-house. So to combine the research perspective and the company perspective together. And we're also striving to validate our framework to get some insights where there could be improvements done with this kind of connecting indicators, models, and the performance assessment of innovation processes. Thank you very much. The research is and was founded by the German Research Foundation, and I'm happy to hear comments and questions. And there's a short selection of some literature. Thank you.